how does it make you feel like you're the star of the show? Everybody here is here to see you. Last year, this event had a handful of police cops, I heard, but because of you this year, look around. There is police everywhere, there is press everywhere. How does it make you feel?
Well, I mean, the reason the police are here is that many people want to kill me in an act of terrorism, which it is under the Danish penal code, to kill a politician because of political actions. So that's the reason the police are here, because I'm under the threat of my life from many radicalized Islamists. And that's very sad.
Oh, sorry to interrupt. But you provoked a lot of those actions. You went to the Muslim areas, you went to the areas where you knew people are sensitive to you burning their holy book. So you knew that you would bring this upon yourself. Why did you do that? Yeah. Why did you provoke them so much to put your own life in danger?
All your premises in that question is wrong. Absolutely.
Oh, please correct me.
So I did not know that because I committed a legal act, and I didn't actually burn the Quran, but people who were with me burned the Quran under my leadership.
But you carried out stunts.
Sorry?
You carried out stunts. Let me correct it. You actually went and you started throwing it out.
That's not a stunt. That's sports. The thing is,
you played sports with the Quran. Okay.
Absolutely.
So you went to a Muslim area and you played sports, as you put it, with the Quran that you knew would. You're a lawyer, so you would know that it would really offend the people in those areas. Why did you do it to provoke them so much that
you have to give me time to answer? Okay?
Please.
I didn't know for a certainty that certain Muslims in those areas would be provoked, but it's certainly true that I foresaw that could possibly happen.
Oh, so
and no, you're now interrupting again. It's a very long answer because the question was also very long in many parts. The freedom of speech only really matters if you do something that really offends other people. Because if you only state something that everybody agrees with, then freedom of speech doesn't matter because nobody will react hostile towards you if you only say something they agree with. So for instance, if I say, when it rains, we get wet if we're outside, that doesn't really offend anybody. So the purpose of freedom of speech isn't really fulfilled there. In my opinion, it's a very big problem if people who are murderers want to decide by committing homicide what the boundaries of freedom of speech is. That's a big problem for me in Denmark, because in Denmark, our law is that the people, through parliament, they decide what the limits of freedom of speech is. And in 2017, Parliament decided that doing stuff with the Quran or any other religious book is illegal. And they decided that by repealing the blasphemy clause in the penal code, particularly in response to a case being brought against my friend John, who's filming here, because he had burned the Quran. So because of his case, the politicians, a great majority of Parliament, decided that it's legal to do that by repealing that. Their reaction from certain radicalized Islamists is to instill fear in the population and either murder or attempt murder on people who burn the Quran regardless. And in my opinion, that in itself, the fact that somebody wants to decide the boundaries of freedom of speech in Denmark by using homicide as a method is enough reason to burn the Quran, to show them that we Danes do not accept that murderers decide the limits of freedom of speech, but that rather the people through parliament must decide those limits.
Mm-hmm. When you're talking about non-Western immigrants who are Muslims, you call them murderers by saying that...
No. I say that certain people who I refer to as radicalized Islamists are murderers. Mm-hmm. That's certainly not all Muslims, nor is it all non-Western migrants at all.
Of course. And I hear your point about freedom of speech and being able to, and the fact that burning a Quran or playing sports with it is not illegal here, and you were expressing your rights. But playing with a football, playing sports with a ball isn't illegal, or burning a shirt isn't illegal. You went to these areas to burn something that you knew would offend those people and provoke them. Why?
Yeah, I'm gonna say that I've already answered that, because we don't want murderers to decide what we can do, and we want to send a message to those murderers that they cannot decide, because we'll keep doing that until we're absolutely certain that they have given up the idea that they can decide with the method of murder. But also, it's important to understand that the whole concept of freedom of speech and democracy is that if you do live in a democracy with freedom of speech, then you're bound to be offended almost every day by somebody either saying or doing something that you don't agree with. And that happens to me. For instance, the people over there, their actions right now are deeply offending to me and to most Danes, because I think that's a great provocation against us, that in a Christian country with a Christian state church, somebody from a very invasive, conquering religion decide to manifest themselves on our City Hall Square in our capital. But we have to accept that because that's part of democracy, that we have to accept opinions and actions that we don't agree with because that's protected by freedom of speech. So that happens in that direction. That we have to accept being greatly offended by this happening. But the other way it also works. We have to accept this great insult to us and our nation and all that is dear from people who come here because they like our money and they like our happiness, which is bound on us being non-Muslim. But they also accept the other way. And the other way is that when I do something with their book that they disagree with, that's also part of the deal.
How does people eating, breaking their fast in the city square, how does it offend you?
Well, it offends me greatly because in Denmark we are a secular society where we don't flaunt we don't show our religion in a public space.
Help me if I'm wrong.
So
you just said you're a Christian society and now you're saying you're secular, so I'm a little bit confused.
Yes, we are a Christian secular society. That's possible because in Denmark, I know it's probably because you're basically in your soul, you're Muslim. But
that's very offensive,
no,
actually.
You think it's offensive to
well,
be a Muslim?
Don't know me.
Well, I'm happy that you agree with me that it's offensive to be a Muslim. I agree with you that too. It's very bad to be a Muslim, but I didn't actually mean it as an offense.
You're judging me. It's offensive that you're judging that I would have a religion based on the fact that I have brown hair.
No.
Based on my name.
That's not at all the reason. The reason is your line of questioning shows that you're unable to understand the basic reasoning that a democratic citizen would have. And your line of questioning shows that those concepts are completely alien to you, and therefore I have judged that you're a Muslim in your soul. So that's it. But if you don't agree, that's fine. I don't think being a Muslim in a soul as such is an offense, but apparently you thought that. I just think it's a shame if you don't live in a Muslim country, because eventually either you will be thrown out of the country you're in if you're not in a Muslim country, or through a great bloodshed you will turn it into a Muslim country. And I guess it's the latter that's happening right now in the UK, and I'm very, very disappointed about that. I feel sorry for the great Britons like Enoch Powell, Winston Churchill, Pat Condell and others who are really fighting or have fought for the survival of the great British nation, and now it's being overrun by people who want to turn it into a caliphate, who want to do great rapes on many innocent British girls, as has happened in many cities. And like the current mayor in London, want to focus on fiction crimes, which is statements against the very bad, stupid religion of Islam, instead of focusing on the fact that many Muslims are running around in that city, killing people with their knives. So that's a great shame.
Is your problem only with the Muslims, or is it with any foreigner? Is it with any immigrant?
Oh, now you're just confirming you're a Muslim because you haven't done your research properly.
You know what? Let's assume I am. Whatever. Yes. You know, it's not about me. It's about you.
Yeah, okay? I think it's about you also. And the reason I think it's about you is the BBC is renowned throughout the world as being a complete shithole media who lies in an effort to advance the Muslim invasion of Britain. And therefore, I do think it's about you when you come from the BBC here and pretend to be an objective, bystanding journalist, when you're not at all. You have an official agenda, and that official agenda is to undermine Western democracies and turn everything here into caliphates, which means into shithole countries.
And
I oppose that very much.
I don't know why you're attacking me. It's perhaps because you're trying to provoke me.
No. I'm not trying to provoke you. I'm just trying to give an analysis of your line of questioning.
I don't want that. All I'm here to do is understand your logic. Yeah, it's because you're trying to provoke me, but it doesn't matter because that's what you do.
That's a typical Muslim response. That's a typical Muslim response.
Yeah, cool story, bro. So what do you... Is the problem only the Muslims, or is it people who are brown? Is it foreigners?
It has nothing to do with the skin color at all. And in our policy, nor race. I reject the concept of race. I don't want to turn people into racists at all. I don't think that's...
you don't think you're a racist?
Well, that would be difficult if I don't want to turn people into racists or distinguish them by race.
Hang on. I thought you knew that you're racist, right?
No.
Racist?
No, you're a racist.
That's very immature.
And the reason you're racist is that you come from a shithole country called Iran, which is a great shithole country, which is, what do you call it, a collection of very primitive people who have a very bad nation and who are very evil to other people. And because you know it's a shithole country, and you can't act the way you want to act towards other people, toward other men and so forth. You come to another country, which is Britain, which is a great country, and there you want to backstack everybody who has received you well and turn Britain into a shithole country like your own home country. So you're racist against Western European people, and you do select people based on your perception of their race. But I do not. So that's the reason. But I can tell you one thing. I did want to entertain you for a short period of time because I think you should give people the benefit of the doubt. I have done that to a greater extent with you than I could possibly imagine I would ever do. But since you are basically a no-good Muslim who wants to destroy Britain and who just used slurs against me, and you're also a racist and probably also a Nazi. I think you are a Nazi. I don't think I should use any more time with you. So that's it.
One more question. One more question.
So I'm a racist.
So this man, he just touched me because the BBC likes to use violence.
Asking the question now.
What do you think should happen to the Muslims in this country?
I think they should be helped to relocate to their own home countries, just like I think you should be helped to relocate to your home country of Iran. And I wish you all the best there. Really, I do.